For 5 years, the United States military made it rain on purpose, not a theory, not a rumor from the internet. A classified military operation flown over 2,600 times, hidden from Congress, hidden from the public, and denied until the day it could not be denied anymore. This is not fiction. This is the historical record. It has a name: Operation Popeye. And it is the reason the phrase weather modification stopped being science fiction and became federal law. Here is where it starts. In 1966, during the Vietnam War, the Pentagon began testing something new. Not a weapon in the traditional sense, no explosions, no bullets, rain. The technique is called cloud seeding. Aircraft release particles into existing clouds, usually silver iodide. The particles give moisture something to condense around. If it works, the cloud rains harder and longer than it would have on its own. The military's target was the Ho Chi Minh Trail, the supply route feeding North Vietnamese forces. The logic was simple. Roads made of dirt turn into roads made of mud. Trucks stop moving. Supplies stop flowing. They called it making mud, not war. From 1967 to 1972, American aircraft flew more than 2,600 cloud seeding missions over Laos, Cambodia, and Vietnam. The missions were disguised in official logs. Field commanders often did not know the true purpose of the flights. Control sat with a small circle inside the Pentagon and the White House. Congress was not told. In 1971, journalist Jack Anderson broke the story. In 1974, under pressure from the Senate, the program was formally acknowledged. The declassified briefing records include a line worth hearing exactly as it was written. In the government's own assessment, the experiments were, quote, undeniably successful. In fact, the internal concern was that they were too successful. Neither the volume of rain nor the area it fell on could be precisely predicted. Read that again. The concern was not that weather modification failed. The concern was that it worked and could not be fully controlled. 3 years later, in 1977, the United Nations adopted a treaty called the Environmental Modification Convention, ENMOD. It banned the military use of environmental modification techniques with widespread, long-lasting, or severe effects. Nations do not typically write treaties banning things that are impossible. So that is the confirmed history. The United States weaponized weather, hid it, admitted it, and the world wrote a treaty about it. Which brings us to the question this episode is actually about: what happened after? In 1972, before Popeye was even public, Congress quietly passed a law, Public Law 92-205. It requires anyone conducting weather modification activities inside the United States to report them to the federal government. Today, those reports go to NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. Since 1972, weather modification in America has not been a question of weather. It has been a question of paperwork. Cloud seeding is real, legal, and ongoing in parts of the American West. States like Utah, Colorado, and Texas have used it for decades to boost snowpack and rainfall. Water districts pay for it. It is not hidden. It files reports. That is the documented baseline. Now here's where the story gets stranger and much more recent. You have probably heard a different word for all of this: chemtrails. That word does not appear in any federal law or program document. But the fear behind it, that something is being put into the sky above you without your consent, is the exact fear these next stories are about. Case 1. The startup selling sunlight. In 2022, a two-person company called Make Sunsets began launching weather balloons filled with sulfur dioxide into the stratosphere. The idea is called stratospheric aerosol injection. Sulfur particles high in the atmosphere reflect a small amount of sunlight back into space. It mimics what large volcanic eruptions do naturally. Less sunlight in, slightly cooler planet. Make Sunsets does not just launch the balloons. It sells what it calls cooling credits. Customers pay money, the company releases sulfur, and the customer is told they have purchased a measurable amount of planetary cooling. Their first launches happened in Mexico, without the Mexican government's consent. Mexico responded by moving to ban the practice entirely. The company relocated its launches to the United States, operating from sites in Nevada and California. By late 2025, the company claimed more than 200 balloon launches and more than 200,000 cooling credits sold. In December 2025, it was awarded a United States patent for its balloon delivery system. With just 2 people, latex balloons, a patent, and a business model built on slightly dimming the sun for paying customers. No international body approved this. No federal geoengineering license exists to even apply for. That is not an oversight in the system. There is no system. Case 2. The government notices. In April 2025, the Environmental Protection Agency sent Make Sunsets a formal demand for information under the Clean Air Act. Sulfur dioxide is a regulated pollutant and has been since 1971. The EPA administrator's public statement was blunt. He said the idea that individuals, backed by venture capital, were putting pollutants into the air to sell cooling credits showed that, in his words, climate extremism has overtaken common sense. The company's response was just as blunt. They posted publicly that they were a 2-person startup, proud the EPA was paying attention and that they would not be deterred. Their words. We have a planet to cool. Whatever you think of either side, notice what this exchange actually is. A federal agency and a private company openly arguing about ongoing atmospheric modification in public on the record. The debate is no longer about whether or not it is happening. Case 3. The states start banning the sky. In 2024, Tennessee passed a law prohibiting the release of chemicals into the atmosphere to affect temperature, weather, or sunlight. In 2025, Florida followed with Senate Bill 56. It repealed the state's old weather modification licensing system entirely and replaced it with a prohibition. Injecting or releasing substances into the atmosphere to affect weather, climate, or the intensity of sunlight is now a third-degree felony in Florida. Up to 5 years in prison. Fines up to $100,000. The law goes further. Starting in October 2025, Florida's public airports were required to report, monthly, any aircraft equipped for weather modification. The state built an official email address and online form where citizens can report suspected geoengineering activity to the Department of Environmental Protection, a state government formally asking its citizens to watch the sky and file reports. Montana's legislature advanced a similar ban in 2025. It passed the state Senate before stalling in the House, and it carved out an exception worth noticing. Traditional cloud seeding for water management would have remained legal. The ban was aimed at the newer techniques, aerosol injection, solar radiation management. More than 24 states have now introduced some version of this legislation, and in July 2025, it reached Congress. House Resolution 4403, the Clear Skies Act, would make weather modification a federal crime nationwide. Up to $100,000 in fines and 5 years in prison, with every single release counting as a separate violation. Here's the detail almost nobody mentions. That bill would also repeal the 1972 reporting law. The Federal Registry that has tracked weather modification for over 50 years would be replaced with a complaint portal for suspected violations. Whether that is stronger oversight or weaker oversight depends entirely on who you ask. Case 4. The Watchdog Report. In February 2026, the Government Accountability Office, the federal government's own auditor, published a review of NOAA's weather modification oversight. Its findings were not flattering. The GAO recommended that NOAA improve how it reviews and confirms weather modification reports, strengthen its guidance for public reporting, and better inform operators and state governments about its oversight role. In short, the one federal agency responsible for tracking weather modification in America was told by the government's own watchdog that its tracking needed work. NOAA agreed with every recommendation. 3 months later, the House Science Committee requested a formal briefing from NOAA, citing concerns about a technique called marine cloud brightening, spraying fine particles over the ocean to make clouds more reflective. Experiments have already occurred inside the United States. So let us put the whole picture on the table. Weather modification is real. It has been federal law since 1972. The military used it as a weapon and called it undeniably successful. A private company is selling stratospheric cooling by the credit. The EPA is investigating. States are making it a felony. Congress is debating a nationwide ban, and the government's own auditor says the oversight system has holes in it. Every piece of that sentence is documented. Now for the part that cuts both ways. If you have been with this channel for a while, you know that is exactly how we like it. If you believe every line in the sky is a chemtrail, the documents do not support you. Ordinary aircraft contrails are water vapor. That is settled science, studied for decades. The chemtrail theory names specific metals: aluminum, barium, strontium. No document in the record confirms any program spraying them. Those metals also occur naturally in soil and dust almost everywhere on Earth, which is why sample readings alone have never held up as proof. What is true is narrower and stranger. Academic papers have seriously proposed aluminum compounds as a theoretical option for stratospheric injection. Proposed. On paper. In journals. That is what the record shows, no more and no less. But can anyone prove that every aircraft in every sky is only making water vapor? No. And here is why that answer is honest instead of paranoid. Cloud seeding planes are real and flying today. A private company is releasing sulfur into the stratosphere right now, and the government's own auditor says the system tracking all of it needs work. Most lines in the sky are just water. That is what the science shows. But the claim that nothing is ever released into the sky above you stopped being true a long time ago. The documents themselves say so. And if you believe the official story ends the conversation, history does not support you either. Operation Popeye ran for 5 years, while officials denied weather modification was happening at all. The people asking questions in 1971 were called paranoid. In 1974, they were called correct. Both of those things are true at the same time. That is what makes this subject so difficult and so worth your real attention. The honest position is not certainty. It is the question that sits in the gap between what is documented and what is denied. Because here is what the record actually shows. Every time this topic surfaced, the institutions said the same thing. It is not happening. It is small. It is under control. And every time the files eventually opened, the answer was bigger than the official story. We are not telling you the weather above your head is being engineered. The documents do not say that. We are telling you that the capability is real, the oversight is thin, the money is moving, and the laws are being written right now, in public, while most people still file all of this the same way. Chemtrails. Conspiracy theory. Case closed. It stopped being a theory in 1974. The only question left is who is watching the sky and who is watching the watchers. Stay skeptical in every direction. Open as many doors as you can. Decide on your own. Up next, on the Realize Files, we explore Operation Mockingbird, exposing real lies with real eyes.